Welcome back to my channel. You're watching HQ BMW. My name is Jeff. So, Saturday morning, we're gonna hit this hard. We gotta get the brakes changed on the E92 this morning. You just watched the car getting put up on the jacks, wheels coming off, and now it's time to do the brakes. Let's get after it. A quick note when you've got your vehicle jacked up. One thing you should remember is put your tires that you take off, put them under the car. If anything was to happen and the car was to fall off these jacks, these wheels ultimately can save your life. Just a little tip for Saturday morning. Let's get these brakes taken off. One thing to note before you get started, I just had to run out because I didn't have it. You need a 7mm hex socket. I thought I had one. I looked in my kit and I didn't. So I had to run to Canadian Tire and pick up a hex socket. Now we should have the proper tool to remove the caliper, get the brakes off, pull the rotor off, and get the job done. Here we go. One thing I needed the hex socket for was right here. The caliper is held on by 2 bolts. One is right here and there's one below. So we're gonna take that off. That'll take the caliper out. There's gonna be this mounting bracket that we'll have to take that off. Take this nut out, and then the whole rotor assembly is going to pull off. You're going to have to remove this bracket on the outside. Super simple to do. Once you get the bolts backed out, this caliper pulls off, and now we can go on to removing the actual bracket. One thing to note is do not let this caliper hang by the brake hose. You are going to cause yourself so much more grief if you do that. If you bust that off, it's going to be a world of hurt and you're just going to be hating life. So it looks like the brake pad sensor pulled out, and it actually looks not too bad. However, we're going to change it anyway. Typically, this breaks or is seized in the brake pad when you do the pads. So to get the bracket, this bracket off, right there, hopefully you can see that, right there is a 16mm socket. There's one on the top and the bottom. It's very, very tough. It's torqued down, so it might take a bit of work to get it, but pull those out and this bracket's going to come off. Here's the bracket, the 2 bolts, and the old brake pads. Now we're going to pull out this bolt and slide the rotor off. There is the rotor removed. That nut was that bolt was a 6 focus. It was a 6mm to get this guy out, and then I just give the rotor a tap with a hammer and she popped off. So now we are just going to put the new rotor and pads all back in the opposite way we took them out. One thing I suggest doing before putting your new rotors on is get some brake cleaner and a clean rag and spray the brake pad surface and get all the grease and shipping oils off of it, it will not only prevent any premature failure, but it'll also help your brakes set in when you're doing the brake pad initial break-in. Since I had it off, I just used a clean off wheel and just knocked all the rust off the ring so that the brake can sit there. I'll give this just a little touch up with some paint so the rust doesn't continue, and then we can get the new rotor put on. Not a must, you don't have to do this. I'm just trying to prevent the next person or me from doing the brake job again, from causing any more issues. So we'll get that coated, put the rotor back on, and get this brake done. One of the main reasons I like buying Centric brake pads is it's one of the very few companies that actually sends the new hardware and everything with their pads. I've bought some performance pads for my F30 and no new hardware come with it. It said to reuse the old stuff. But Centric can provide it with all their brake pads. I don't understand, but ultimately this is the reason I chose Centric for this car. Now, where the pads do? Well, I thought they were doing okay, but in comparison, look at the difference. That's old one, there's the new one. Old one, new one. So, I mean, to be honest, these probably could have done another 1,000 kilometers to 2,000 kilometers with moderate driving. Obviously, if you're racing or being, out of control, then you're gonna burn through these quickly. But better safe than sorry. There's two things in the car that protect you. You got brakes and you got your tires. Those are the two things you should never cheap out on, or don't wait until the last minute, because I could have just replaced these pads, got the rotor resurfaced, and been done with it. But for the cost, I'm just replacing it all. So we got the new rotor installed. We got the bracket reinstalled. I wiped it all down again to make sure that there's no contaminants on the rotor itself. So we'll get the new components put back in, and then we'll be done the driver's side. Then we can move to the passenger side. There we have the caliper mounted back on. I ran the brake pad sensor. It's pretty straightforward. All you just got to remember is to, just as you take the old one out, follow it back and plug it back into the brake pad. You can see it's seated in there, and now you can see how far that is actually away from the rotor. So we were getting pretty minimal on the brakes. There you have the rotors changed. I'm going to jump onto the other side, change that all out, and then we will go and do the brake pad bedding process. brakes are done. So we're gonna get the wheels put back on, torqued down to appropriate manufacturer specifications, and then we'll take it out for a road test and do the bedding in process. The bedding in process is going to be based on the brake pads and rotors that you guys choose. So make sure you follow the manufacturer's recommendations for bedding in the brakes. It's all pretty standard on what they all want. They want you to get to a speed, slow down to a stop, speed, slow down to a stop, speed, slow down to a stop, and then to another speed, slow down, speed, slow down, speed, slow down. It's a whole process that you got to go through for bedding in the brakes, but make sure you follow what your brake manufacturer recommends so that you get the longevity life of your brakes. I hope you guys found some of that informative. I'm not any professional by any means. I'm a guy who likes working on cars. So if I can do it, you guys can do it as well. Drop a comment, questions below. I read all of your guys' comments. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. Like this video if you got anything out of it. It would be greatly appreciated. And have a fantastic weekend. Peace.